As a Yorkshire girl, I've been the butt of jokes for many years. Apparently, I'm thick, tight, I am a bit, and I wander around a field in a flat cap in my spare time, chasing whippets. However, far from being offended, I find these suggestions funny. Now, you might be wondering, what on earth has this got to do with the fact that Donald Trump has been elected the 45th President of the United States? Let me explain. I can safely say he wouldn't have got half as close to the White House if Americans with seemingly non-PC views weren't suppressed. Likewise, I don't believe Brexit would have happened if people here were allowed to discuss their genuine concerns without being branded offensive, racist, or xenophobic. I am fed up to the back teeth with political correctness. Quite simply, it's time for us to allow honest conversations and for the offended to start being less offended.
I'm staying. Well, I didn't like the way the whippet looked me in the eye. That's what I really didn't like. I find it depends what you mean by political correctness, doesn't it?
I mean, the trouble is, what I mean.
If political correctness means you can't say offensive things about disabled people, offensive things about women, offensive things about ethnic minorities, then I'm all in favour.
Let me give you some context then to make it clear exactly what I mean. So, I think one of the reasons Brexit happened is because the Remain campaign was so afraid to even mention the word immigration. And it stems all the way back from, do you remember, was it Gillian Duffy, I think it was, when she said something about a legitimate concern. Gordon Brown told her she was, said behind her back she was a bigot. No, she wasn't. She was just a person that had a legitimate concern. And I think we have got to the point where if somebody feels something, it's suppressed, and then when it gets suppressed, what happens is, if someone's afraid of uncontrolled immigration or wants to discuss it, or concerned about the threat of ISIS and wants to discuss it, it gets suppressed. Someone then comes along with a much more extreme view. This ordinary person gravitates this extreme view, and then you have the situation that we've got with Brexit and with Trump.
I don't think that's what political correctness is. I mean, you can have any of those discussions in a perfectly rational, logical way. You can actually say, look, I think more immigration would be bad for this country for the following reasons. There's nothing wrong with that.
That conversation doesn't happen, Greg.
It's the use of the language that you have to be careful with.
I think, Michelle, on one level I agree with you. I believe in free speech. I don't think it's healthy for people to not be able to say what they think. Mm-hmm. But I think we should all remember that so-called political correctness arose for a reason, right? There was a time in many people's lifetimes when you could put up a sign on your property to let saying no blacks, no Irish, where you could assault someone like me, you could use racial abuse to speak to me, where women were spoken to in the most horrible terms.
Yeah, that's awful.
And now I think people who would like to do that use political correctness as an excuse for not being able to behave abusively. And I want to show you a clip from the Trump campaign which makes the point.
Your Twitter account has several disparaging comments about women's looks. You once told a contestant on Celebrity Apprentice it would be a pretty picture to see her on her knees. Does that sound to you like the temperament of a man we should elect as president? And how will you answer the charge from Hillary Clinton, who is likely to be the Democratic nominee, that you are part of the war on women?
I think the big problem this country has is being politically correct.
Are you saying, Michelle, that you would prefer a world in which there are no consequences for people speaking about women, for example, on the world stage like that?
No, that's not what I'm suggesting. I've done the British Apprentice, and if Alan Sugar turned around to me and said, I'm visualising you on your knees whilst I was in a boardroom environment, I would find that very odd, to say the least.
What's the alternative, Afwan? A man says something inexcusable. I'm not here to defend it. He's put in stocks for the rest of his life. Is that what you want?
No, I'm not saying that's what I'd like.
People say things they regret. People make ribald comments. I say for the 15th time, I'm not supporting the comments they make. But you guys seem to want to live in a world that the minute you say that, that's it, you're written off.
No,
Michelle on this one is absolutely right. We only have this conversation about immigration now because of Brexit. The firm you used to run, the word was banned. There was never any reflection of people's views who thought they couldn't get jobs, who couldn't get on. It was like the Antichrist to mention that.
I would like
the BBC.
Yes, I am. Their coverage was appalling.
I would like to point out that this week this week, Rachel and I were both accused of being politically incorrect for saying what we thought, thought about something which was very clearly happening in front of us. Harry was reported to be dating somebody who had mixed race heritage, Meghan Markle's. I wrote that I thought the press were being racist about her because they were referring to her background without saying it. I was told that I was reaching new lows for bringing race into the equation, when to me it was clearly part of it. And then Rachel wrote a column making a similar point, praising Harry for choosing somebody from a different background, and she's been pilloried in the press for that as well. So here you have an example of us expressing something that we have a view about and being told, ironically, by the newspapers who usually lambast political correctness, that we shouldn't be allowed to say it.
That's the world you've created, not you personally, but that's the world that has been created by the left, where people can't have... Even you, I'm very sorry to hear, and I hope you're not personally in any issues, and likewise, well, I don't care, really. But I hope you're both OK. But you've created this world where people can't say these things.
But you see, nonsense. What nonsense? The Daily Mail, which is the paper that was the worst offender in my view, has never subscribed to the world that the left created. But when it's convenient to them, they then will be happy to use it to silence someone with a liberal opinion. It's complete hypocrisy. I've been out of the country, I've not had when Trump wants to be abusive towards women, he uses political correctness as an excuse. So while I think that there is merit in having a conversation about what we should be able to say and why free speech is important, I think that we can be really lazy and just use political correctness as an excuse for people who want to behave abusively, offensively, and in a way that can actually really incite hatred. You've seen Muslims in America this week saying they do not feel that they can safely walk around with their hijab on. They fear being physically attacked for being visibly Muslim. That's not funny. No, that's not just banter that shut down our political correctness.
But then let me come back to that, because what I would say about that is, in this country, last week or so, we've seen a gymnast get banned by the British Gymnasts Association from gymnasts for 2 months for having a private joke at a private event. There he is, a private joke about a private event about Islam. All hell broke loose, because apparently you must not dare to have a laugh, say anything that might be deemed offensive. It's utterly ridiculous. I look at that ban and I think that, for me, is one of the things where political correctness has gone absolutely mad. That guy has been toured around mosques, forced to be educated about Islam and all the rest of it. And actually, if he wants to laugh at something that other people may or may not find funny, that's up to him.
We should say he has subsequently apologised, but where do you draw the line?
He's apologised for saying it. That's what's interesting. He's apologised for...
What do you want him to do?
Well, it means he now thinks it was the wrong thing to say. Right. So he accepts that actually...
Do you know what? He probably doesn't, actually. I don't know the guy.
We can't say that. If he's apologised, he's apologised.
But what I feel is that actually, when someone's made a private joke, if that's their view, then that's their view. And then what happens is they are absolutely vilified, shamed, made to feel bad. And it's the same as, like, the conversations about immigration. I know that I've made comments about wanting controlled immigration in the country, which I absolutely stand by. I've been told I'm a racist, I'm xenophobic, I'm really thick. No, I'm not. I just don't like the idea of uncontrolled immigration.
Look at it in context. You know, the day after the Brexit vote, someone came up to me and said, "Oh, well, you'll be buggering off now then, won't you?" You know, and it's like political correctness unleashed. When people feel freed from it, if you want to look at it as something that shackles people, it gives them licence to do and say things that are completely unacceptable. Now, I'm not saying I think it's good for people not to be able to speak about how they feel, because we all know that leads to the rise of extremism, right? And things go underground, which isn't healthy. But I think we need to acknowledge, you know, when you say political correctness gone mad, it's like you're forgetting why it came to exist. It exists. The reason that he's been made to apologise for that comment is because not very long ago, and still, Muslims get assaulted verbally and physically because of their faith. So whilst I agree with you to a point, I think that we need to remember that those rules exist for a reason, to protect people. And I want to live in a country where those people are protected. I don't know about you.
I'm not saying anything for fear of further offending anybody. Kensington Palace. I just want to make one distinction between derogatory terms, which we all know what they are, and factual descriptions, which is what I feel I got into trouble with this week by referring to somebody's ancestry as African American, or in previous occasion, which we need not go into, Kenyan. Why is that racist, xenophobic, anti-political? You know, why is that not politically correct to use a factual description of somebody's background? Anyway, it's not now. You're not really allowed to add any tags to that, and that's the lesson
on which we walk.
Exactly, and I think that is regrettable, because this is a free country and we should have free speech without being incitement to any sort of xenophobia and racial hatred.
There you go. Amen to that.
Yeah.